You're live, sir.
Hello. Welcome to the Scratch Golf Live here in March 15th, 2022. We're excited about it. We're just getting started, so we're anticipating quite a few people coming in. We hope so. We appreciate your attendance. So should they put things in the boxes if it's good sound and good audio, good volume?
Yeah, let us know if you guys can hear everything okay.
Yeah, if you can hear everything okay, Gary's with me here. Please give us a 1 or a thumbs up or some sort of a signal in the comment box.
They're not going to be able to see you hit from this one.
Okay, I can make swings. They can see that. I can spell.
Okay, good.
Scratch Golf Live.
All right,
This is
here we
Gary.
are.
Here we are. We're gonna
Hey,
see if we can
everybody.
be helpful to you tonight. Happy to get your questions. I'll do the very best I can. Hopefully, give you some insights.
Have them start piling in the questions.
Yeah, please start sending in the questions if you have them. Again, if you're okay with the audio, the video, I should say, and the audio, just put a 1 for video and a 2 for audio in your comment box. Is that what it would be, a comment box?
Yeah, there should be a comment box right there.
Also, be glad to, as we wait for people to come in, it always takes a few minutes at the start here.
Good.
Okay, good. We would be glad to.
This is what they're seeing right there.
Okay,
Now you
great.
can see both.
We would be glad to know who you are, where you're from. I have a couple of friends I'm anticipating joining tonight, so maybe put, your name, Joe Smith from Michigan or from wherever you're from or something like that. We'd be happy to hear from you.
So do you have a theme tonight, sir?
Well, the theme tonight, it's for most people, it's a little bit in the off season. So I thought if you had some questions perhaps or some thoughts about practicing in the off season when the weather isn't so good outside. I'm in an indoor studio here, the Lag Shot Studio, so we could certainly touch on that. As a matter of fact, if you have a place just to swing, you don't even have to have an elaborate setup like this where you're hitting balls into the net. You can go to a Target or a Walmart or a Kmart or something. You can get a mirror that big, flimsy, with a teeny frame, and just lean it against the wall, literally for $30, $25, $30. So helpful to be able to see yourself making moves. And the idea in the off season or in the evenings, let's say for a minute or two, get the club in your hands. See, I can see myself down the line, and just get familiar with the kind of places you want to be with your arms, your hips, whatever, and map them in where they're smooth and you're familiar with them. So much easier when you get out to the range or the golf course to make that happen when you've become very familiar with it. It allows you to think less too once you're out there. So that's
Gotta go fast.
okay.
So we got a question today.
Yeah, what's the question?
The guy is, let me see, his name is Daniel Ferris. He's saying that he's turning his hands over too quickly.
Okay.
Coming through swing, probably turning.
My
too
guess is,
quickly.
Daniel, you're probably hitting some hooks. Typically, that was what would happen. You could be hitting some weak, thin shots or something like that. Almost always, when someone turns their hands over too quickly, it's the result of one of two things. It's either the club face is too open, perhaps the grip is weak, and so if they don't flash their hands at it, they wind up hitting a lot of slices. That's not uncommon. The other thing, if the club's in a reasonable position and the club face is manageable, what makes the club release is the stalling of the body. So if the body hits the brakes too soon, stands up or stops, you can bet that club's going. So think of it, if you're sitting on the hood of a Volkswagen, is driving along at 30 miles an hour, I'm going to keep this reasonably safe. If they hammer the brakes, off you go, off the front of the thing. So that's supposed to happen in golf. You're supposed to slightly resist with your body, crack the whip a little bit, but almost certainly, if that's happening to you, you're stalling a little too quickly. So I would focus, if I could, on good body rotation through the ball, keeping your body angles not straightening up, and the better you turn, the less that club will close over. If you look at the great players, and there's been a few over the history of golf that had shut club faces, Lee Trevino, Paul Azinger, David Duval, there's been a few of them there. They're the ones that most don't need to release the hands because the face is shut. Zach Johnson's like that, current player. They're the ones with the most body rotation through the ball because it slows down that release. Hope that's helpful.
Okay, I got a good one. So we have a YouTuber that's asking, how do I get the club face square at impact?
Well,
square at impact. How do we achieve that?
Well, so I mean, First thing is, if you have a predominant tendency, most people leave it open for the right-handed golfer, slice it to the right. If you have that tendency, the first thing you want to do, check your grip, of course. It's hard to go into a lot of detail here on that. Do the opposite on a small scale. So if you leave a lot of balls to the right, get in there, hit some short shots and snap that thing and hit some little squib hooks out there. Do it on a scale you can do it on, so your brain gets to experience what the opposite feels like. Your learning will always be sharper and quicker in a motor program if you can find the boundaries. Then you can find narrow distinctions such as straight. But for most people, they hit it right, and they hit it nearly straight, then they hit it right. They never get the other side of the fence to do it. Now, if you're a golfer that has a pretty even mix of balls both ways, you're just not good at squaring the club, which is less common, to be honest with you, than one predominant thing. Then what you do is you practice the little hook, you practice the little fade, then you practice at a very small hook, very small fade, and keep playing with the boundaries again, but make it fairly supple. Playing around with it is what gives you skill,
Okay,
not always trying to hit it straight.
This is a good one. I struggle with this one too. How to wait on getting the club to the top before starting your downswing.
Getting too quick with the downswing.
I don't know why that is such a thing. I struggle with that. When I tell
No,
people,
you have the best, most beautiful paws at the top.
well, that's generous.
Anyone that's ever swung a club,
That's-
you have this
that's
beautiful paws.
You know, I think it's just it's about feeling the right sequence, really. If you look at any great player, and I mean any great player, and you look at midway back or 2/3 the way back where the club is in space, in 100% of cases, there are not a lot of things you can say that about great swings. It's always more acutely angled and closer to their body on the downswing, 100% of the time. And frequently, I was teaching a guy today, we were mapping it, his is significantly wider on the downswing. That's always a sign of too much pressure on the club.
Do you
So
think the lag shot would help?
the lag shot would be great for that because of its flex.
Any of those
we
at
grab
any time.
It's the left, well, we get a right-handed lag shot. This thing more or less forces you to do that. It's got so much bend there, thanks Gary, and it's got extra weight versus a real club, not dramatically, but a little bit. You can really feel the club bouncing and lagging there like that. You have more of an acute sense of it. It would be great.
Drill that you do is get
loose
with the wrist.
So if you take a golf club, and I'm just going to pinch it with my fingers here like so. So I cannot control this club. I'm down to the bottom of the handle. I'm well above the ground. Let me back up just a bit. And if I go back and then start my legs forward, you will see that club bounce like that. I have no control over that club. The physics of what's happening are, as the weight of the club still just moving back, that is interrupted with a forward movement of the body, and it causes this bend. You'll see that in a whip or a towel. You crack a towel and you see if the back end of it doesn't billow like that. So people have to experience that a little bit. And I think once you tap in, do it at a very slow scale with super slow wrist to how the club responds to you, you'll find it far, far easier to get that proper sequence. Because in reality, honestly, you stand next to some of these top-notch tour players today, that swing's over, they hit the ball hard, but they get the right sequence. So it doesn't have to be super languid and slow, it just has to be the right sequence. I'd work on that.
So we have 3 questions. How can we gain club head speed? We got some people
You're
asking
asking
if there's specific exercises that we could do. One guy said, can we do more push-ups, or is there exercises or stretches maybe?
Well, I think, now let me put in a plug for Titleist here, who I have a FootJoy glove on there. Titleist developed something called Titleist TPI, the Titleist Performance Institute, many, many years ago. And they've invested millions and millions of dollars in this. I'm certified at the low level, just enough to be able to talk about it, frankly. But they went through with some of the best experts in the physiology and training world and sports world, and they put together a sequence of 20 tests for the average golfer. It takes about 7 or 8 minutes. You have to have a TPI trainer with you, and they give you a body handicap. It's very interesting, and the way you look does not necessarily define how you do you look at some people and say, geez, that guy's slim and athletic. That doesn't necessarily mean it. And once you've done these, they'll pick out the 3 or 4 or 5 that are your worst at. Could be hip mobility, could be shoulder mobility, whatever. And they have a battery of stretches and exercises you can access online, and these are top-notch things. So if you go to mytpi.com, if you don't have a trainer you really trust. It's golf specific. You can see all over the country where they're located, what their level of certification is. I'd go for level 2 or 3, probably in the trainer, not the golf pro. I would look at that, because the better your body is, the better you can move. That would be one element. The next element really is good sequencing. We just talked about loading the shaft, using the legs to create angle, not thrusting it and wasting it, getting the club in a reasonable plane where you can release it properly. That would be another factor, in other words, technique. And if your body's decent and your technique is reasonably good, the next thing is just speed, practicing speeds. The speed sticks, we've done a little stuff with those guys. If you haven't seen those speed sticks, check them out. What are they called? What's the company name?
Super Speed.
Super Speed. The weight of it, a little heavier than a golf club, slightly lighter than a golf club, and somewhat lighter than a golf club. They have these wonderful training protocols, and you start swinging with unbelievable speed, and what it does is it gradually trains your mind. You ever had a car or a golf cart has a governor on it? In other words, it could go faster, but it's got a governor, it's got a pause. That's how your brain is with most motor programs. So by going through the training protocols within their stuff, and we had a discount link from Scratch Golf.
The driver is good for
the last
increasing
shot
your
driver
speed.
would be good. But you go through their training protocols, swinging with speed. They're not expecting you to go out to the golf course, try to swing as quickly as you can, but your average level of speed will grow. So it's swing technique, body stuff, TPI, and training for speed. Super speed stuff is great. Matt, if you're around, maybe you can get a link for our viewers for super speed. That we have a discount link, I think. I don't want to throw the onus on you, but that might be good.
We do. So we got a good question.
Okay, what's the next question?
Come over here.
Okay.
So this is my TikTok on the right.
Oh,
that's
okay.
why I'm saying.
I gotcha.
That's why we're doing a combination.
Okay.
So this is kind of a joint venture
Excellent.
thing here. So
I'm a little less technically savvy than this boy, so.
We got Scratch Golf Academy over here on
Yeah.
YouTube, and we got TikTok over here we have us over here on TikTok.
Excellent.
So we have a question from our YouTube audience, and he's asking how important it is to keep the back arm, what is that called?
The trail arm.
The trail arm tucked to your side. How important is it to
Excellent
keep
question.
that arm
That is a
tucked?
very, very important topic. We're good with the Scratch Golf audience.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
We're just
Okay,
having
so
fun.
the trail arm, right arm. When you begin your golf swing, it's simpler than you think. Let me just put it that way. Your triceps, if you have reasonable posture, will be reasonably close. In other words, there'll be some connection there. And certainly in a good takeaway, there'd be no change in that. So if you look at the back of me, at this point, I feel pretty much the same connection in my tricep as I do at the start. However, later in the backswing, this arm has to load. If you picture if I had to throw this club, however I'd throw it, something like that, it wouldn't be very easy if I was tucked in. So it's reasonably connected, but then it has to pivot and set the club. It depends a little on your swing style and your shoulder mobility, but it has to set. So at the top of the backswing, it is most certainly not connected. There are some players that are fairly connected that are on tour. Most are more like this. The left arm would remain, the lead arm would remain fairly connected, but that gives you power. Now, we talked a little while ago to one of the questions about how to load the club, the sequence. You look at a baseball player and you look at the bat, when they step in, it gets closer to them. So, hey, if you like the key of tucking your arm in on the way down to, I don't think that's super athletic. I think it's better off to find a good position and a dynamic movement, because as that club loads, it forces your arm in closer to your body. That to me is the thing. So it's fairly connected at address in the very beginning. It disconnects and folds and sets the club there, doesn't want to get too squashed, and then with the dynamic loading of the club, it reconnects and is nice and close to you as you hit. Same as baseball, same perhaps in some tennis strokes. Okay, what else have we got?
Is
Hope that's all.
weight shifting the same for all clubs?
Good
He
question.
has problems shifting weight forward with his higher lofted clubs.
Okay, that's probably, most people have a problem all the time, but typically if they have more of a problem, often it's the less lofted clubs. Anyway, let's talk about that. Round numbers, yes. Now certainly if you do force plates, and I've been on those and around those quite a bit, hey, there's a pretty distinctive weight shift pattern with the driver, let's say, or maybe a little bit of fairway wood. Once the weight shifted in, the body tilts back a little bit more, and quite frankly, I don't think that would change a whole lot the way the force plates, but we would be more stacked on our front leg with a 9-iron, let's say, than a driver. But in both cases, the hips and the weight would have shifted forward, although the body's in a different position. Simple way to, and I'll get to your question in just a second in a bit more detail, but if you took a golf club and you had to throw it up over a fence or something, that's the kind of look your body would have. That would allow you to throw it more up in the air. That's your driver swing. If you threw it so it went out along the ground, that would be more your short iron swing. Your body would naturally find that. Now, regards weight shift, by far, and I've seen this a lot with video timed with force plates, by far, in my view, the biggest reason why people have a hard time shifting their weight is the club thrust too much. Now, if you doubt that, try this. Let your arms hang and see if you can shift your weight in the road. I've yet to meet the person that couldn't shift their weight doing that. But they're unable to do it frequently when they hit the golf ball. And again, I've watched a lot of force plate data timed with high-speed video. When the club thrusts and it moves basically away and towards the ground with a lot of force, it pushes weight back down into this foot. And it's like having someone pull you here while you're trying to shift your weight. If you let the club, as we've been talking, gather and react to you, it's as easy to shift your weight as if you don't have a club in your hand. So that's what I'd be looking for. Hopefully those subtle distinctions, driver versus short iron, are helpful.
How do you get less in to out with the arms? I feel my hands are getting stuck behind my body and a little flippy.
Yeah, that's a good question. In fact, we have a YouTube video coming out in the next 2 weeks on that. 3 weeks swinging too far from the inside or pushing the ball. It's a much less common problem than coming over the top, and congratulations to you, because it would always be a better player, in my view, pretty much always, that came too far from the inside than from the outside. So a couple of things I would try to look at. I mean, there are a lot of possibilities, but generally try to make sure when you swing that you don't let your trail arm get too far behind you at the top of the backswing. If it's right out there in front of you on this side of your head, David Leadbetter used to like the image of a door frame, hands out in the corner of the door frame up here. That helps. The next thing, almost always, when someone does this, the body straightens and pushes this way. Think of it this way. If I was, let's say I'm aiming this way, give or take. If I had to throw the club 45 degrees that way, do you see how my body would do? It would push forward. It's called early extension. The hips go from flexed to extended too early and too much towards the golf ball. And when that happens, the club tends to drop behind. So keep that arm in front of you more. Try to get your core to pull your arms back in front of you. And as you do it, stay in your angles and turn. Don't straighten and get too square this way. That's what I would try. Hit some little shots where some finishes where your hands are very low by your left hip, body's more bent over, might look something like, you know, that kind of finish. Arms low and across you, body forward. That hopefully would help you with that.
This is a good one.
Yeah.
So we always want to know what the professionals are thinking. So we have a good question, like, what are your swing thoughts right now? What are you working on?
What am I working on?
Yeah, she said, what are your swing thoughts? So I'm guessing, is that what you're working on maybe now, or what?
Yeah.
What are your swing thoughts? Is what she said.
I think what you'll find, and okay, I'm a professional sort of, I'm a reasonably good, and I played professional at a minor league level back in the day, so I'm familiar with it, but I've been around a lot of really highly competitive
He's very
players.
Humble.
I worked for David Leadbetter for 15 years in his heydays, and he was teaching Faldo and Price and Ernie Els. So I've experienced what they go through, and I can tell you they fiddle and fidget and experiment a little bit too. You're a human being, it's a low margin for error game, and you wake up in the morning, you got to try to find something that fits. Here's the big difference though. This type of player, they've seen their swing usually a lot on video, they're very familiar with their tendencies, they get coaching, they use the mirror, so they know where their trouble spots are. Nick Price's were different to Nick Faldo's, were different to Charles Howell's, but they know where their trouble spots are, so they fiddle with ideas within that fairly narrow range to solve the problems they have. Now, my personal tendencies, I often get my arms a little too upright, and then I tilt a bit too much coming down and get a little bit too this way. So I'm usually working on something. I'm working on something right now where my arms feel a little more across my body. My right hip feels a little more up and deep, sort of in this way. And when I'm back here more, I can feel more like I'm swinging around me on the way down and less like I'm dropping it under. So you need to know what your tendencies are. And even when that's the case, it's okay to experiment and fiddle as long as you're fiddling with the real nuts and bolts of your problems. I mean, listen, YouTube, we have a lot of YouTube videos at Scratch Golf. Thankfully, a lot of followers and people like them. The smart YouTube follower, unless they're just recreational watching golf videos, would go, let's say they flip the club at impact. They might look at videos that have to do with lower body motion and flipping, but not necessarily swing, plane, and grip. So be discerning. Fiddle, it's okay for your thoughts to change, but within category.
This looks really good, man. Doesn't that look good?
That picture's good, yeah.
It
We can
looks
see it
solid.
all.
Everyone's saying how nice it looks.
Hey.
Congrats.
Terrific.
Okay, when I try and add speed, I always seem to hit fat shots.
My guess is there's really two things that would probably make you hit fat or hit behind it. One thing would be straightening the wrist too soon. The club the circumference gets wide too early, you start to reach the ground. Another thing would be weight too far back. The farther back you are, the sooner you'll hit the ground. It's possible to get way out of plane here and have something happen. But if you drop kick and chunk behind the ball, it's probably a blend of those two or one or the other. So we've discussed this a little bit here today. You've got to let the club react to you like you're whipping a carpet over here. And you've got to get a little playful. Put a ball underneath you, not that you're going to hit, but just outside your club. Even if you over move, practice moving and hitting the mat or the grass way over here. Even if you move a little too much, experience something different. But I'm telling you, if your weight gets to the left and you have some lag, you are not going to hit the ground too early.
Is there any drills that you could do when they're out the range?
Well, yeah, again, I would get them far enough back you can probably see the ground now.
Yeah,
So
we can see it.
I would really hit the ground like so far over there, nice and soft, that it's too far over there. Experience a little too much of that. With the one caveat, don't let yourself have the luxury of coming over the top to hit the ground farther forward. Has to be along your body line.
Hip
But
bump.
you try it for yourself. If you have wrist bump, that club is not going to hit the ground until they straighten out. So it's got to have, that has to pop later, more here, and you'll pop the ground farther over there. Wherever that, if you hit the ground at all in any golf swing, you will hit it where the shaft is vertical. Shaft vertical is always true low point unless you do something drastic. So you've got to make sure those wrists pop with some snap and some athleticism, but more here. Most times people thrust it, their weight hangs back, and they hit the ground back there. So hopefully you can sort, it's not that difficult if you'll just be patient with yourself and make some practice swings, honestly.
How do I set up on Sidehill lie as I have to set up open in order to allow left arm straight due to enlarged chest from illness adaptation? Ball above feet situation.
Okay.
Ball above feet, Sidehill lie. How do I set up in order to allow left arm straight due to enlarged chest from an illness adaptation?
Well, I mean, if you have some sort of physical limitation or whatever, you know, then that would apply on any swing, really. I mean, it's hard to say without seeing your swing and seeing your grip and a few things like that. But let's say, okay, let's say your arms are slightly bent because your chest is a little big. Lee Westwood, arms are a little bent as he hits it. Used to be Ricky Fowler did that a little bit. Jordan Spieth's arm is just a tiny bit that way. That's okay, but how do we adapt whatever we do well? Let's say you can hit it well on a level lie. How do we adapt it to ball above feet? This is the easier of the drills, of the possibilities. Ball below feet's more difficult because first thing you can do, you can just make the club shorter. I mean, I can make this club 4 or 5 inches shorter, and it's a pretty unusual hill that's a lot steeper than, or a lot steeper this way than that. The other thing I can do, I can stand a little bit taller. I can do a little bit less squatted over, and as I stand taller, my swing should round out a little bit. It should get a little more this way, so you don't want to swing up and into the hill. So shorten down a lot until you feel like you can straighten your arms and not jam the club in the hill, and stand up just a little more. You should be okay. Always wise, by the way, take a few practice swings to sort of measure the hill and find your balance when you've adjusted it like that. Hope that helps. It should hook a little bit. It should turn for the right-handed golfer a little to the left, because what's happening is you're taking loft and tilting it backwards, and it tilts the face slightly to the left.
So open your stance.
Yeah, aim a little to the right for that.
We got a question over here
Let's see if I can go back. Explain the back of the wrist on your left hand during the backswing.
Yes.
Cup or flat?
Well, okay, first thing I would say, and I can say this definitively, it isn't definitive. And the reason is because there's been some great players with pretty cupped wrists and there's been some great players with pretty flat wrists. So it couldn't be definitive. However, here's what I think, my 2 cents worth. In a good grip, I mean, listen, if my hand is like absolutely bored flat there, my wrist looks flat. But when you make a grip, your knuckles stick out a bit. It doesn't mean my wrist isn't lined up. My wrist is straight. That's actually a bowed wrist. So a normal grip has some small amount of cupping, depends on your grip. And I think if you take, let's assume you have a decent grip under the pad, you have good mobility, a reasonable neutral look there. If you hinge it straight up and down like that, that's the easiest and best way to hinge the wrist. I'm telling you, most mobile. You try that and flatten your wrist, it's not as comfortable. Cupping it gets the face in a bad spot. So I think they should hinge like that, which means there's the appearance of a very slightly cupped left wrist at the top for the right-handed golfer. It's not really cupped, it's just the knuckles are sticking out. Tiger Woods had a weak grip and bowed his wrist a bit, especially as he started down. Obviously worked for him. Fred Couples had a very cupped left wrist at the top, so get it neutral. I think that's your best bet. If you just do this a few times and then take that and put it to the side of you, you should have the feel. Thumb under club is another good thing. If that left thumb is more or less supporting the shaft at the top, you've probably got a good position.
So one more over here on TikTok. We got Chill says, I keep coming over the top. I'm losing a lot of speed and distance. Is this easy to fix on the range? He keeps coming over the top, so he's losing a lot of speed and distance.
This isn't unique, I'll just tell you. It's about 80% of players.
Hey, I just want to say, this is lag shot, right? So lag shot is the #1 thing at teaching you how to come from the inside. It literally forces you to come from the inside.
Yeah, lag shot's very helpful with that because it tends to promote good sequencing. The club loads well. I do like that. I would think of it this way. First off, is there an agitator why you might come over the top? The most common one is a golfer doesn't grip it well, the club face tends to stay open. If you watch impacts at very, very slow motion speed, maybe you haven't, I've watched tens of thousands of them, that ball will immediately deflect off that club face is open, and not only will it fade, it will start right and fade. And almost always when someone has a hard time squaring the club up and fades the ball or slices it, they will develop a tendency to swing out in because in a way it helps them. It shuts that down a bit. So first thing, make sure you have a grip and a release pattern where you can square that club up. You don't have to hit hooks, but at least get nothing that's a consistent fade or slice. That's #1, because that would be an agitator. #2, bear this in mind. Your pivot primarily moves your arms around you in this fashion. Your wrists and arms primarily move the club up and down. You need some of each of that in a good backswing. So we have some around and some up, roughly over the shoulder. It's in the reverse on the way down. Your pivot moves your hands out. The release of your arms and wrists moves the club down. Almost always, slicers keep this too squashed. They move their shoulders too much. And before there's any significant downswing, they've come out here, then the club's chopping down. So if you picture skipping a rock, if I was skipping a rock, hey, I would lead with my body. I'd bump, but I wouldn't turn like that. So all you want is a nudge forward of your weight, something a little dynamic. The rest, you've got to get the club down. You've got to release that right arm a bit. We're not talking throwing it like that. If I was whipping something like this, whipping a chair or something like that, that's the feeling. You have got to get that thing down more before you get too much turn, and you'll solve it. I like the little drill. Put a ball on a tee, go down where you're almost to ground level over by your right leg there, and once you're down there almost all the way like that, make the 5th or 6th one, just let yourself go and hit the ball. You'll start to experience the club being more at your side and less out in front of you.
That's a good one.
Hopefully that's helpful.
I like shot. They're good for that too. So we have Bob says, too long a backswing causes the player to move their head. Me. Ways to know how long is too long.
Well, that's a good question. Bob, is that right?
Bob?
Bob, okay. Well, I mean, here's his pros and cons here. I mean, if the longer the backswing, within reason, the more time you have to build speed on the downswing. If you look at the these world-long driving contests and things like that, rarely will you see a swing as short as parallel. They need to hit it a long way. These swings get long. So length is positive, but it's a little harder to control the club and hit it straight and hit it solidly, frankly, if the swing's too long. So you're sort of measuring within yourself, where's my best point where I'm getting some length to hit it pretty far, but I'm not getting so long that I start to break down and lose my coordination. That's different for different people. I mean, Phil Mickelson has that club like that. You know, Tiger Woods is much more like that. But that aside, so you've got to map it out what works for you. If you're chronically long, I think I'd look at three areas. Many times, people that don't cock their wrists well, usually because their grip's crummy, it's up in the palm. What happens, you can't hit a ball without wrist cock, not anywhere. They just keep swinging until momentum folds the wrists at the top, and with it almost always folds the arms, and not unlikely, the body topples a little bit like that. So if you're a long swinger, get some pressure down on the handle, get that set. And once it's set, keep the grip and the glove away from you like that. Don't let them bend toward you. That certainly will make a difference. You have to work on that. It's especially a problem with this trail arm. It just collapses and bounces. The next thing I do is just try to put some resistance in the body. Do some pivots. Hey, you want to be able to turn where your back's to the target, but you should feel some resistance by that point. So I'm medium flexible. I can make a fairly full backswing with a moderate amount of hip movement. But most people that have long ones have a lot of excess movement. So firm it up, get the wrist cock, firm your legs up a little bit, practice that a bit, but don't get too short, or you probably cost yourself some rhythm and some distance.
So we had a question a couple ago that I can't seem to find, but
Okay.
I believe it was on YouTube. The guy said that he's having problems hitting off the toe.
Okay.
And so he's trying to figure out how he can work on getting it more to center contact. And my first thought was,
Yeah,
this guy.
chalk spray is great. I mean, it allows you, this is face spray. You could use Dr. Scholl's foot powder. CVS has their version of it. The former
Good for your driver in your woods.
They're great to see where the ball is. You want to see, number one, is it a consistent pattern of something that's not good? That tells you one thing. Or is it just a lot of inconsistency in the pattern? That would tell you a couple of other things. But if it's toe, usually what it is, the club gets a little steep, a little too vertical, and the player is athletic enough to fight it, you know, to sort of, and what they do to fight it is they drive the handle up and their chest and body up. It drops it back to the inside, but it effectively shortens the club this way. Just a little bit will do it. So usually if you look at most great players, their body angles are pretty true to what they were at address, obviously turned a bit, and the shaft sticks out pretty well. It doesn't get significantly taller for most great players. So I would practice just some little swings, feeling like the handle's lower, the chest is lower, then the club should maintain its length. Again, though, it could have something to do with getting steep on it. Hopefully that helps. We have a video at YouTube. I have a whole video called How to Stop Hitting Toe Shots or something. It's got quite a bit in there and some drills. You might find that helpful.
So Chris says, I never compress the ball, and I tend to just brush the ground before the ball, so all my shots go high.
Yeah.
He's a scooper.
Right. Well, okay, Chris. That, and you probably already know this, that would be if my watch is the ball, that is not enough forward shaft lean as you hit it. Now, there's three real reasons why top players, at least on an iron, have so much forward shaft lean as that. Number one, this, if you've got no tee under it, the sweet spot of the club is several grooves up. It's not halfway up, it is several grooves up. You want to tilt the sweet spot against the ball. Number two, you can apply pressure against anything more when the club, when there's an angle between your trail arm and the club. You try to knock a tree stump down, you'll hit it harder like that than you will like this. So that's another reason they lean the shaft a little bit. And the third reason I touched on earlier with someone was the true bottom of a golf swing, the true low point is always shaft vertical. If you hit the ball on an iron where the shaft is leaning forward, if you get a divot, which you're much more likely to do with the pressure you're creating on the ground, it will happen where the shaft gets vertical, which is just after the ball. So that's the big key. Can you get the club leaning forward? Now, that could be, I mean, it's hard to say without seeing your swing why that isn't happening. By the way, if you take an iron, take an 8 or a 9 or a 7 iron or something, put it on a tabletop in front of you, or your hand if it's, or your watch face, you will notice if you get the shaft absolutely vertical, the leading edge of the club will be maybe 1/4 of an inch off that level surface. The reason it's built like that is because the club designer is anticipating forward lean at contact, so then it's level. That'll show you. But 2 things, make sure your grip is in the fingers enough and strong enough that you can square the club, because when the shaft is forward, it tends to leave the face open. You've got to be able to turn the face. And then get out there, get something like a 9 iron. We are not trying to hammer down. We are trying to lean the club and hit some little punch shots with short, low finishes, seeing how low you can hit the ball. Again, I'm assuming there's some sequence and you get to your left side and load the club a little bit. Start hitting some knockdowns and you'll do really well. One sideline point, a lot of people don't realize this. You look at almost any great player on a mid to short iron, and if you put a line on the screen right when the club's parallel, by the time they've just hit the ball, the handle will have actually risen a little bit. There is some upward arc, so their swing is actually level to slightly up. The only reason they measure a fractional downward hit on a launch monitor is forward lean. So believe me, you look at Tiger Woods or someone, they have so much forward lean. If their handle didn't rise a bit, they would plow a huge hole in the ground. So handle rising, think of a broom, just flicking the bristles like that. That constitutes that small downward hit, not a downward hit, so to speak. Hope that helps. If you can remember all that, you've got a good memory.
So I just want to say, we have a lot of people on YouTube that have been following you for years, and everyone is saying, thank you so much, Adam. You are an amazing coach. You've helped us. You've done so much for us. Adam's one of my best friends. He's my business partner at Scratch and Lag Shot. He's a big part of there as well, and we came a long way. We started this company, Scratch Golf Academy. You guys can't see me over here. But we started Scratch Golf Academy together in 2016. And on one of our trips, Lag Shot, the idea was born at that club right there. I don't know if you guys can see it, but Cabot Cliffs, we went up for a vacation. And
yeah.
So everyone wants to just say thank you so much.
Hey, thank you.
You've helped me tremendously.
Wow.
Go from a 30 handicap to a 5. We had a competition on TikTok the other day where I had my swing and everyone got to guess. People were saying +2 and
You got a good
8.
swing. You should have seen his swing 4 or 5 years ago. They're a lot different.
Yeah, so Adam is just
Well,
an amazing coach. So I just want to step in and say thank you for everybody that has been following Adam for years. And guys over here, you need to go follow Scratch Golf Academy. The YouTube channel is amazing. Best golf instruction online, hands down. You can see it, obviously, right?
I appreciate that, Gary, and I appreciate you guys also, because, you know, I've been lucky enough to have a nice career. I played a little bit professionally, took lessons from David Leadbetter before he was famous, worked for him for 15 years, been around a lot of the game's best teachers through relationships with David, teach at a beautiful facility. If you look at the YouTube videos, you'll see how beautiful. So I've been lucky with that, but it's really in these last 4 or 5 years that on any kind of broad scale, I've been able to get my ideas and thoughts out. They're based on decades of teaching golf and being around some great players. People have liked it. Some people don't like it, but a lot of people have liked it, and it's it's nice. It makes you feel good, and I'm glad I can help people. And hey, we appreciate you.
So we're not going anywhere yet. We're not ending the show. We still got some time. I just wanted to give that thank you out for him, because I kept seeing it in the comments and I felt inspired to come over here. And I keep getting comments about, let's see that swing, Gary. So here's the deal. You need to go follow me on TikTok, because I am blowing up the TikTok with my swing, Adam's swing, all of the Lag Shot Ambassador swings, all the people over here. You need to join the Lag Shot Ambassador team so we can start promoting you on all of our channels and help you grow as well. So we're going to get back to the questions. I'm going to step over here and just see what they're saying. Cabot Cliffs, just an hour from us, somebody said.
Oh, great place.
Give anything to have Adam swing.
Oh.
Yeah, right?
Some days you wouldn't, but thanks. I actually, it's funny, this is how golf is. We have a big teaching mirror on the tee where I work, and I was teaching someone about a week ago, and I'm 30 yards from there, but as I turn around to see someone, I noticed I could see my reflection, but I was sort of at probably an angle like this. So I didn't even have a club in my hand. I made a backswing, and I just had a good feeling about the way my hips moved and the way my hands moved that I'm not sure, I'm always working on kind of the same things. I'm not sure I'd ever quite felt it that way. I couldn't wait to get this lesson over with. Hopefully I was professional. And I closed my eyes and did some swings, and I'm really kind of excited about this feel I've got. It's just helping me do stuff I know I've always needed to do, tilt my hips a bit more, get my arms a bit more across me. So I'm starting to like my golf swing a little bit more the last week. I'm excited about it, but haven't really had an opportunity to work on it. So anyway, I posted 2 of these new swings, these slightly updated swings to Gary, and he might throw them out on TikTok if you have any interest. What have we got here for questions?
All right. So what do you think about Ben Hogan trail elbow move in the downswing?
Ben Hogan right on. This is an interesting thing. The 2 golfers probably, there are probably others, but 2 great players that have the most similar looking grips, very weak grips, meaning the hands over here, and also very bowed left hands as they hit the ball, because you really have to with that weak grip. If you don't bow your wrist, supinate it, you're not going to get the face squares. Johnny Miller and Ben Hogan, they come right to my mind. Very similar impact patterns when you look at, now Johnny Miller's a way bigger guy than Ben Hogan. And the interesting thing is, Johnny Miller grew up in the 50s, and his dad used to teach him his golf, and they used to hit in this net. He's from San Francisco. And he used to, in those days, hitting with your left arm only for the right, it was kind of in vogue, and it carried to be in vogue into the 1970s. I got a dose of it in my early years. This was considered the way you did it. And Johnny Miller, in consequence, everything he always wrote and said was how it's a left-handed feel, a left-handed controls the game. Ben Hogan, with the same grip and same look, was famous for saying when he was playing at his best, he wished he had 2 right arms to lash the ball with. That's kind of probably what you're saying, that right arm. So that is a lesson in the ball doesn't react to what you think, where you look, or what you feel. It reacts to the golf club, plain and simple. Everybody knows that, but people tend to, I've had the question, where are you looking on the ball? Is that the magic? Of course it's not the magic key. The magic key is delivering the club well. So you have to find for you what helps you swing well. We all know roughly what we're supposed to look like. We're supposed to load the club, we're supposed to get our weight left. Club should come somewhat from the side of the body over here. What are the things you need to feel and you need to do to make that work? That's what's going to make you a good player. So pick and choose. Hey, I love Ben Hogan, obviously, who wouldn't? Tiny anecdote, an old golf pro friend of mine is in his 80s now, Ronnie Ward. He made it, he's maybe the most eccentric person I've met in my life, pretty close to it, and he made it his mission 50 years ago to find out some sort of stuff from Ben Hogan. So he used to stalk him a little bit. And one day he's at the factory, the Ben Hogan factory, probably 1972 or 3, and he goes in there and says, I'd like to meet with Mr. Hogan. And his Hogan secretary says, do you have an appointment? He says, no. And she says, I'm afraid he's not going to meet with you then. She's a nice lady, and she said, I'll tell you what though, at noon or 12:30, he always goes to his car. It's the Cadillac out there, and he leaves for lunch. Catch him when he leaves. So Ronnie did, and he went up to Mr. Hogan. It was a little bit like, who's this nut job here? But he asked him, do you think the players of today, this is 1970, do you think the players of today are better than the players of your era? To which Mr. Hogan, as he got in the car, said, they're pretty good. So it was a long way to go for not much information. He did get to talk to Hogan on a couple of other occasions briefly, but it was a similar sort of brushback pitch kind of an answer. But there you have it. If you like Ben Hogan, 2 books you must read. They're very thin, easy read books. One is called Afternoons with Mr. Hogan by, I think, Jody Vasquez. He was a caddy for Ben Hogan. When Ben Hogan retired from golf at Shady Oaks in Fort Worth, he was a teenager then. Hogan liked him, was comfortable with him, so he'd always have him shag his balls for 2 or 3 years. Took him under his wing, got him clubs. They had a real relationship. And it's just his anecdotal stories about the days shagging balls for Ben Hogan and the kind of things he talked about. You could read it in an hour. Afternoons with Mr. Hogan. The other one, similar in flavor, Chris Chetter, T-C-H-T, something like that, E-T-T-E-R, very prominent ladies tour player for 2 decades. She went to college in Fort Worth, and they were allowed to practice at Shady Oaks where Hogan was a member. He took a shine to her, helped her with her grip, and they soon became very good friends, and he coached her and helped her for years, even followed her on the tour. And when she was back in Fort Worth, and it's her sort of recollections of not just him and their relationship. Final round he ever played was with her, but also how he was with people, who he would talk to, who he didn't. If you like Ben Hogan, those two books, that one is called Mr. Hogan, The Man I Knew. Love those two books. You'd enjoy those.
Do you always want to turn the body as much as possible for a full swing?
No.
Repeat it back so they can hear
So
it.
the question is, sorry about that long-winded Ben Hogan stuff, but do you always want to turn the body as much as possible in the backswing?
Yeah.
On a full swing?
Full swing.
I don't think so, no. You're trying to create movement, certainly, but you're trying to create some stretch and some torque that you can whip back and hit. So a lot of times when people use the word turn, or they think of that, they just kind of spin around their spine and they don't really create that. I think a better feel, I really love this drill, get a good golf posture, get your hands together. You can have a club in your left hand if you like, but leave the club/glove there and reach obliquely, diagonally behind you, and you'll get a feeling for this stretch and how that really is a dynamic look. You move your hands from spot A to spot B, but you'll sort of get a sense there, hey, that's about enough. You don't want to get all this stuff, and you don't want just a great big turn off the ball. You want some turn, but you want that stretch. So find that happy medium where you've got some torque and resistance. I love that little drill I just showed you. We used that with a guy in a lesson today. Hope that's helpful.
What kind of swing setup is ideal for a tee shot with a fairway wood, 3-wood?
What kind of a swing setup is ideal for a tee shot with a 3-wood or a fairway wood of some sort?
Should it be like a driver, an upward hit, or like an iron hybrid downward hit?
No, I think if it's a 3-wood or something like that, not a 9-iron, but a 3-wood, which is really what the question is, you would still want a level to slightly upward hit. But you would tee the ball, and a driver, you'd have the ball maybe 50% of the ball above the top edge of the club when you tee it up. That's as an average. There's been some players that did more or less like that. But with a 3-wood, you'd have maybe a quarter or a third of the ball above it, because you're not going to hit up as much as a driver. It's much thinner from bottom to top. You don't want to get a huge amount of air under it and have to time it. So you want it pretty near the ground. I'd go same ball position and setup as a driver. You may not be ascending quite as much, but basically a driver swing with fairly low tee underneath it. Maybe a third of the ball above the top edge of the club face is what I would recommend. Now, people sometimes wonder why, and there's exceptions to this, but as a matter of physics, you'll hit your 3-wood straighter than you will your driver. That's why on tight holes, sometimes tour pros use them. And you'll hit your 5-wood straighter than your 3-wood. Here's the reason. It might be of interest to you. First off, the shaft is shorter. You don't hit it quite as far. So you're standing a little closer to the ball. That's a little bit. The real underlying reason is this. You may not know this, but it is a fact nonetheless, that let's say golfer, a lot of swing speed, hits a gigantic slice out there on a solid hit. Let's assume solid hit. The ball does not actually have side spin. You would think it does, right? But what happens, picture the ball there, if you impart that sort of a look to it, you actually tilt the ball. It puts the axis this way. Picture an airplane with a low wing. It will go this way. So the ball is actually spinning around its axis. It tilts its axis opposite for a hook. Now here's the rub of it. The nearer the equator you hit, in other words, the less loft you hit with, the easier you can tilt the golf ball. You get like a lob wedge and almost hitting down at the South Pole. Under there, you really can't tilt the ball much. You get a bunker shot, face wide open, you're going completely under it. It barely creates any directional bias. So the driver, because it has less loft and to some extent more speed, always is the easiest to curve. Just something to bear in mind. That doesn't mean I'm suggesting you shy away from your driver unless you're really struggling or it's a really tight hole. Anything else there, Mr. Gary?
Yeah, absolutely. Any drills for a proper takeaway?
Any drills for a proper takeaway? There's loads of drills for a proper takeaway. It really depends what your flaw is, but by far, to me, the most common flaw is club head moves too much for the body and almost always comes back to the inside over here. That's overwhelmingly the takeaway problem I see with people. So in that case, we're looking for something where, as your body reacts, the club begins to react to you. So you look at Bobby Jones, the great Bobby Jones, there was almost a little bit of lag in his takeaway. Ben Hogan actually had a little bit of that as he started as well. That's more what you're looking for. I think drills might be, if that's your problem, get your right hand for the right angle in front of the club, back of hand up against the shaft. Club head will be a foot or so off the ground. practice some moveaways where you feel your core working, this staying fairly close to you, but your right palm looking more this way. Invariably, when people move the club, their right palm and club face look out that way. So from this perspective, my right hand's looking more down in front of me, less that way. I like that one. I might get a little ball or a bucket.
The number one, the
Lag shot. Lag shot's great for that. Because, yeah, the lag shot's great for that because
it forces you to have a takeaway.
yeah, I mean, it's certainly noted for its lag on the forward swing, but to a small extent, you get that little Bobby Jones feel of the club reacting to you on the backswing. So
you can't snatch it. You can't turn
you really
the lag
feel
shot.
it when you kind of whip that thing inside. It's pretty unnatural to do. Why is this important? Well, again, dealing with the problem we're dealing with, the club has a certain plane. You do that and snap it underneath that plane over here, you're going to be fighting that club the rest of the swing. If it stays more in front of you, that's preferable. I can tell you for certain, if you look at most tour players, many of them have really pure takeaways, but there's many more, if I get my camera angle right, that have the club well outside their hands than have the club well inside. Because at least from there, the club is reacting to you and its predisposition will be to flatten and load a little bit. Once it's here, it's pretty hard to stop it from doing that. So those kind of drills are good. Just doing some in slow motion. Hey, is the club looking more this way versus that way? And one thing you'll find when you drill this in slow motion, say without a ball, always practice a little extra cuppiness here and the club more there. At speed, that club will whip inside a bit more. So don't get it perfect in slow motion. Have it a little bit more like that. What else have we got? Anyone? Yeah, you could do, pre-hinge is a good drill. You pre-hinge your wrist and then turn to the side like that. That kind of promotes that feeling that the club's in front of you like that. That's a
hard compact soil.
Chipping off hard compact soil. It isn't easy. Let's say that, number one. And when at all possible, use a less lofted club. If you look, if I come up to you here, my phone's saying low power. I don't know if it needs a charger. This face, oh thanks. This face, this 58-degree sandwich, is tilted away from the ball. If there's no cushion under the ball, I get where you both can see this, it is a lot harder to hit. If you get a club with a little bit less loft, this is quite a bit less, this is a 7R, and the face tilts up on the ball a lot better. Can you see that? It's not tilted away from the ball. That's why, by the way, putting is so much easier off the green. It isn't always the best choice, it isn't always the most accurate, but it's so easy to hit it because the club face is T-squared up against the ball. There's no loft to deal with. So less loft would be one thought. I still maintain, unless it's just really sitting in a hole or something, that you still want to have a very level spot at the bottom of your chipping stroke. Don't dig the front of the club in like that. Once that club starts chopping or digging, what happens is if you hit that much behind it, you chunk it. If at least it's fairly level and even for 5 or 6 inches, hands maybe slightly forward through impact, you create a much more usable spot with many less really bad shots. So nice level impact, choose a less lofted club would be my thoughts, and calm your nerves however you best do that. It isn't a piece of cake.
How to stop pushing putts to the right?
How to stop pushing putts to the right. Obviously, you look at your aim. One of the things people don't check so often, friends will say your feet are aimed to the right or something. The putter face is what really determines where that ball goes. In fact, studies with launch monitors and things show that from straight putt 6 feet, you can actually have a stroke that's somewhat offline. If the face is square at impact to the hole, it will probably go in or nearly go in. So that's number one thing with those short putts. So here's a little something you could check. If you're chronically hitting it to one side or the other, there is a very good possibility that your alignment of your putter isn't good. Now, I had the good fortune to have been around a guy who I think is one of the best putting coaches in the world. He's come down and done some guest schools at the facility I'm at, and I've gotten to help him and know him well. Mike Shannon, he used to be at Sea Island, the head putting guy there. He's now at TPC Jacksonville. He has taught literally 150 different pros over the years, including Tiger Woods on putting at times. And Mike has really pioneered something fascinating with alignment. I've done this a lot. I have a laser at the office. It works. It is, you can take it to the bank. And that is this, assuming, let's say 10-foot straight in putt, assuming reasonable setup geometry, each person, surprise, surprise, as an individual, their triangulation tendencies are not the same one person to the other. Now, in a group of 100, you'll get some that are the same, but it's an individual thing. And what Mike found out with a team of optometrists and I think he had 150 people over a year and up, it was a long test. Mike's like that, he's a researcher. They found that 10 feet straight in, if you have the, relative to your triangulation tendency, if you have the ball in the right spot underneath your eyes, ball position in other words, you will tend to line up very well. If the ball, the right spot for me may be a little different to you. If you have the ball forward of that, you will always aim the putter face left, but think it's aimed straight. If you have it too far back for your eyes, you will always aim it right, that could be you, and think it's straight there. So what he will do, what you should do is get some 10-foot putts straight in, get a buddy or a spouse or whatever to sit behind you. You don't have to be a golf whiz to know if the putter's lined up. And hit a few putts and have them tell you where they think the putter is lined. You probably don't have a face laser like I have at the office. If you're lying to the right, which I suspect, move the ball position up a bit until when you think it's straight. In other words, when it's instinctive, it is straight. Then you've got the right ball position. Similarly, if it's aiming left, keep moving it back till when you think it's straight, it actually is, as verified by your friend. There is a magic bullet. And I'm telling you, on short putts, having the face lined up well is just such a difference. Something's happening with that phone, I think. TikTok. So try that out. You'll love it. You'll thank Mike Shannon for it. Now, here's the naysayers in the world of putting. And there are a few that are really good putting teachers. They say that the putter, you should hit the ball maybe a degree or two on the rise. Nobody's really arguing with that. And if the ball's fractionally forward of center, that more or less guarantees that. And I would say with a good stroke, that more or less would hold true. Here's Mike's counter to that. On a good stroke, the putter is so close to level for 5 or 6 inches. In other words, within most framework of most ball positions, that, okay, you might sacrifice a fraction on angle of attack, but the benefits of good club face alignment far outweigh whatever the defects or the drawbacks of perfect angle of attack. So try that out. Might be fun for you guys, whether or not you're struggling with your putting.
Slide over a little bit.
Yes, sir. What do we got?
So coming back to the lag question, we have a guy that says when he's trying to hold lag, he hooks the ball or pulls it. Every time he tries to hold it, he's pulling it and hooking it. What can you do?
My guess is as you try to hold it, we talked about the guy coming over the top earlier, and we said, hey, the arms have got to get down a little bit before the body pulls them out too much. My guess is as you try to hold that angle, you're coming over the top using your trunk too much relative to the club and just swinging left like that. So my best, assuming a few things, reasonable plane, reasonable grip, a few things, my best remedy for most people, I've seen this have the most effect in golf lessons, is instead of trying to hold lag, again, I said earlier, 100% of great players increase lag as they come forward. They don't just hold lag. Think of it this way. Get a swing and try to, with a nice soft pair of wrists, try to get the most robust release you can, and then just try to put that in the spot you want it. If you can snap those wrists hard somewhere near the front leg, like that, you put it on film, you'll have plenty of lag. To me, that's a lot more instinctive and athletic and a lot more effective than just trying to hold this angle. As I say, you're probably just pulling your shoulders too much as you hold the club and pulling the ball that way.
It's like that, huh?
Yeah. That
Coming
kind of
over the
thing.
top
Right,
and just...
yeah.
And
The club has to release a little bit. The trail arm has to release, but you just want to snap that thing. If you're any good with the towel and you can do that, you can lag the club. I'm telling you, if your grip is decent.
That's a good one. I think about it. He's like tracking.
He's probably doing that, yeah.
Super tracking. That's what that's all, right?
Hopefully that's helpful. I would, yeah, you know, when I saw that thing in the mirror the other day with my swing, I couldn't wait to get out there and film a few swings and hit some balls. If you're a real golfer, you love this stuff. So if hopefully I've come up with something that you might find intriguing or interesting, go out and have some fun with it.
Advice on staying in the shot.
Staying in the shot, mentally, or physically staying in posture.
I'm guessing posture,
Okay,
maybe?
posture.
Let's say posture.
Well, first thing, is there something that's maybe causing you to need to not be in posture? The most common one is when the club gets too steep, you're either going to bury the club in the ground, that chops down way too much. This brushes, people won't let that happen. They either stand up, which helps, it's not perfect, but it helps in that situation, or some people frequently will shorten their arms. You sound like the kind of guy, if I've got my guess right here, that's standing up a little bit as you hit. I mean, picture, if you will, if I had a baseball coming at me and it was pitched too close, I back up a little bit to try not to get my elbow pounded. It's the same effect when you come down steeply. So as a guess, you're probably on a little bit of a steep plane. It's making you come up. So I would practice some swings where you get the club, don't whip it inside, but get it coming more from the side of your body here. Picture your hand. I mean, if the table was underneath, you could brush everything off the table there. You would pound down into the tabletop here. Once you've gotten rid of the steepness, you should be able to turn through and keep your angles. Always remember, when they measure with 3D motion capture forward lean, which you're trying to retain, it's always measured in relation to where you are, not where the ball's sitting. So it is a moving measurement. As you move through, you'll feel more bent forward throughout that swing. And as the club comes for a little more from the inside, it'll start to go round you a little more at the bottom. That would be my best guess based on the question you have there.
Let's do something fun. So I've seen this question come up
Yeah.
twice. People want to know, how far away should I stand to the ball? The
Okay.
guy said I'm 5'6", and I don't know where I should position the ball for a 7-iron, driver, long irons. Is there a certain
Yeah, okay,
position?
couple of
You can actually come all
distance
the way
from
over
ball.
here.
Okay, couple of thoughts. Distance
Right
from ball.
here, whatever you want, right there.
Generally speaking, what you're looking for is your arms hanging vertically underneath you. Now, this presupposes reasonably good posture. A lot of people are sort of sitting back like that, so their arms would hang here too much. But with good posture, hips up a little bit, hip joints about over ankle joints, maybe toes to tricep if you look in the mirror. Really, your arms should hang directly underneath you. Now, not every great player does that. Jim Furyk would, literally, you don't see his glove. His hands are so close to him, that's probably why he has to do all this stuff to hit it.
He's
In
got
fact,
to
I
take
want-
it out of his crotch
He literally
first.
does, yeah. I asked David Leadbetter once when I was working for him. Jim Furyk was really coming on, and in those days, he had a bigger loop than he has in the second half of his career. He'd never really had a golf lesson. His dad's a club pro in Pennsylvania, in eastern Pennsylvania. What's the town where all the Amish are? Right in that area. Anyway, he never had a lesson, so David was out on the tour all the time. I said, look, it just out of curiosity. I mean, obviously the guy's playing great. I mean, you know, you don't want to throw it off, but what if you had to give him a lesson? If you begged for one, what would you tell him? He said, the only thing I tell him is stand farther from the ball. And the only reason his takeaway does that is he's so close to the ball. So you've got Jim Furyk on one hand, one of my idols, Arnold Palmer, on the other hand, who's way out here like this, much farther out like that. Those are exceptions, though. Go for good posture, go for hang, a good little drill. When you set up, if you let your right hand come off the club, does it hang about where it was on the golf club? In other words, if you're too far away, it will hang this way. If you're too close, it will hang that way. So that's a good little drill. Hope you can see that on both phones.
Yeah, that's good.
I would say, though, as an average, that's true, but with the driver, I see most great players with a little bit more reach, slightly out with the driver. So generally a little farther for the driver, but that's
So that's
pretty
an
much it.
interesting one, because people, being an
Yeah.
amateur golfer, I think I have to put the ball somewhere.
Yeah,
You know, I don't think of it being, oh, I just hang my arms down and that's where it's supposed to be.
yeah. That's a
That's-
good point. That's
that's
part of really your
beautiful.
setup routine. Is I think when you're an experienced player, the step in is pretty well sets you at the right spot because you're used to it. Hey, quick anecdote, if you'll find this. I've been lucky. I've been around a lot of great players. I picnic Fallow up from the airport. I worked for David. I've played with some tour players. You name it. I've had some fun. I've been lucky that way. But my best day in golf, without doubt, was a corporate outing, 1999, the Ryder Cup, when America had the huge comeback in Boston. So Leadbetter has got 3 of his stooges, me and 2 other guys who are dear friends to this day. We're up there doing this corporate out, a lot of corporate outings around Ryder Cup. So the local golf course is rented out. It's quite an outing. We're going to teach in the morning, David and the 3 of us. There's only about 24 clients. It's not a big outing. There was only one group other than the client group, and it was a foursome, and it was Michael Jordan and John Elway and Mario Lemieux, I think. They got on somehow, but the rest of us didn't get to play. So here's the big thing of the outing, though. Arnold Palmer was the featured guy, of course. He spoke at lunch and spoke at dinner, but he didn't have any afternoon obligations. Obviously, he didn't have to teach. And they had some sort of older senior tour pros to play with golf with the guys in the afternoon. So Arnold Palmer speaks at lunch. Great. Well, he loves golf. He's got to be. The golf course is shut down. He's out at the range. He's practicing. Well, he knows we work for David. Nobody else is around. So we're kind of out there. And next thing you know, he's...
With Jack?
No, just Arnold. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, sorry, Arnold.
Yeah, so
Wow.
Mr. Palmer, I should say. So anyway, he's he's just a nice, engaging man. I've caddied in his group once at Vail, been around him a little bit, not that he would know me. He's a great guy, just great with the fans, great with people. So he's engaging to us, and he'll hit some balls, and he could still hit it then. He was in his late 60s, and well, I know what he did. So the three of us are sitting there. He gets up, and he's got like a 3-iron. He hits this thing, hits it maybe a tiny bit thin or something like that. He turns to us, he said, "I stood too far from the ball, didn't I?" Well, like I'm gonna say, yeah, I think you did. So we just kind of freeze like three statues. But you know, he leaned on his club and he said, and he does stand a long way from the ball if you look at film from him, he said, "Do you know, I have always had a tendency to stand too far from the ball." I'm like, this guy's run 62 tour events and he's telling us this. He just said, hey, but it tells you he's a human being. Tiger Woods is a human being. It's not an easy game. We all have stuff we battle a little bit. I battle getting the ball forward and getting too tilted. You'd think you could fix that in an hour. I've been battling that on and off for ages. So, hey, these things take some maintenance and they take some work. But that day with Arnold Palmer was a great one.
Hey, do you guys have any questions? Type them in. I'll get them to Adam.
We got a few more questions
Okay,
left.
I asked Mr. Palmer about Hogan's game that day. He said some fascinating stuff, talked about the picture of him and Ben Hogan smoking at Augusta next to each other when they're waiting. But one thing he said at the end of it, he said, if, you know, people talk about Hogan hitting this fade, he said, I don't buy that. He said, and I've played a great deal with him. He said, now he could fade it. But that, he said, if you played with him, that wasn't what you'd notice. And he started whacking his big hands. And he said, what you would notice if you played with Hogan was the sound of the shots. The compression of the iron shots. He said each divot was like a little box that would fit in any other divot hole. He said that's what you'd notice if you played with Ben. What a story, huh? It was great to hear it in the flesh.
As you swing down to the ball, should I feel more pressure in my trail heel or in the ball of my foot?
Okay.
Downswing pressure.
Downswing. You want your weight pretty even toes to heels here, but as you go back, as your right side goes back, it's going to, if it's done properly, it will get somewhat towards that back right heel. The first thing you want coming down, and you know, you got to be reasonably subtle, is more of a diagonal weight transfer. So it goes more right heel towards ball of left shoe, not to the point where you're swimming forward, but don't whip it into the heel straight away. Momentarily, a little more into the ball of the left shoe and off the, that helps slot the club, number one. But off the ball of the foot, you can push and spring a lot harder. Once you get on your heel, you lose a little bit of your spring. So back heel, little ball of front shoe, and then push off that and turn is really what you're looking for.
So having issues with hitting clean wedge shots from soft ground. Feel like I'm hitting too fat with a huge divot or knifing it over the green. Any advice?
That's tough, you know, those soft lies, those wet kind of mushy lies on the fairway can be difficult.
So
because
let's repeat it, I don't know if they heard.
yeah, the question was on soft, damp lies, chunking too many wedges, occasionally thin them, daggering some deep divots. It's easy to do with wedges on soft ground. So one of the things I would try to do if it's really soft and soupy, again, if you can get a little bit more of a level spot through impact, handle rising a bit shaft forward and just graze along the ground more, that would be ideal. So one of the things you used to see Tiger Woods do, he maybe still does, he had, at a point in his young career, he was spinning his wedges too much, and his short irons, wedges particularly. So he got into a thing of taking some very stiff-wristed kind of swings. Not truly stiff-wristed, but less whip and compression than he would have. So you might take a little extra club, maybe a pitching wedge instead of a gap wedge, or a gap wedge instead of a sand wedge. Swing with a little less speed, a little firmer wrist, so it's a little more of a this kind of swing shape and not so much wrist and so much chop. And make sure as you do that, it's coming from a pretty shallow angle. We've touched on that. If this thing gets this way, you are going to dig some deep divots on some wedges. So try the Tiger Woods technique, maybe not to reduce your spin like he did, but maybe helps you level it a bit.
All right.
Is that about it?
So what time is it?
I'm okay, we can go.
Couple more. So the question is, the guy is hitting his short irons clean, beautifully, but he's hitting his long irons fat. Any tips?
My guess would be, here's a little proof text for you. You get these with golfers where they hit their short irons, wedges, 9 irons, really far relatively, but their long irons not so far. So disproportionately, they don't hit their 4 or 5 iron as far as they hit their wedge 9 iron. If that's you, and it often is with these situations, what's happening is you have a little too steep a hit, or at least a little too much downward hit. And when you take a very lofted club, it will tolerate that. It's shorter shafted, and you can squeeze it and de-loft it a bit and hit it a heck of a long way. It feels good, you take a divot. But if you start wailing down on those long irons a little too much and hitting down, you cost yourself distance. They need to be hit more from the inside and more this way so you get some launch angle. So my guess, it's no more than hopefully an educated guess, is your swing plane's either too steep this way or you're leaning too much this way and too much angle of attack. Take some of that out, you'll actually get your short irons a little shorter, but your longer irons proportionally a little bit longer.
I didn't realize we went over. So
That's okay.
let's go ahead and end it.
Well guys, listen, gals, whoever's out there, we appreciate you, your interest in golf. I hope this is helpful, it's fun for us. Looking forward to doing this on a regular basis. If you're a TikToker?
So this is my TikTok channel, and this is the Scratch Golf YouTube channel.
Yeah, so you guys
So we
know
have
all those
both our
channels.
audience. I've been showing a lot of the Adam BAZALGETTE'S swings on TikTok. I mean, we've been getting a lot of good response there, and we got our normal fan base here at the Scratch
You guys
Golf
are too
channel.
kind.
so-
I hope we're helpful to you. And for you TikTok folks, I know I'm kind of old for TikTok. My daughter loves TikTok. But if you find some of this interesting, we really lay some of this out in these YouTube videos, and we have the whole scratchgolfacademy.com platform, and that has full organized courses in every conceivable part of the game: mental game, course strategy, driving, irons, full swing, putting, chipping, reading greens, all of that laid out in a course study you can take at your own pace. I hope you'll check that out, scratchgolfacademy.com. And
Wow, listen to this
how
guy
about that
selling
guy?
it.
Selling it, baby.
Amazing.
And then
We've been working for years to produce
finally done this.
the
yeah.
best golf instructional content online that
It's
we
been-
that we can.
yeah,
We
it's
really
literally been
want
years
to
in the
help
making,
people
so-
get better at golf, and your instruction is always very easy to understand.
That's the whole idea.
1 or 2 points maybe at the most.
Mm-hmm.
So for our TikTokers, definitely follow our YouTube channel at Scratch Golf.
Love that.
And we also have, for our YouTubers here, we have a TikTok for Scratch Golf. We have one for Lag Shot.
We're gonna
and
try to
also
expand
myself.
TikTok.
We're gonna get Adam to make a TikTok and get him doing some funny stuff. So
Okay.
stay tuned for that. But thanks guys
Thanks,
for all
guys.
your support. We're going to try to do this as often as we can and get the questions to us as we're doing this, and we'll help you as much as we can. So thank you so much, and tune in to the next one.
Thanks, folks.